Hey folks, are we live?
Live.
All right, welcome. Oh, thanks, Holly. Good to see you. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Steve. I'm the co-founder CEO at Gem. Thanks for joining us for what we're calling Recruiting Real Talk. Feel free to drop your name, your info in the chat here if you'd like. I always think these are such a cool opportunity to connect with each other from the industry. And actually, our speakers would invite you to drop your LinkedIn uh, in the chat just so folks can like connect with you or follow up with you afterwards. So our goal here with Recruiting Real Talk is to keep things like super casual, fun, and well, real. That's the goal. Here's the deal. So I've had the privilege, the opportunity to get to know a lot of really cool people from the industry over the years, and some of my favorite conversations have been these one-on-ones or like small group conversations where we're just talking about it like how it is, as if no one's listening. And I think, as Luke likes to say, shooting the breeze. That's a Lukeism, right? Yeah, I think so.
I think that's just more of a British thing, but yeah, I'll own that. Why not? I'll take that.
Well, I did find out that pretty much everybody here is British except for me. So we'll we'll roll with
Good.
shooting the breeze. But yeah, basically just talking openly about things that are going on in the industry. So I thought it'd be really neat to try to recreate that vibe today for everybody. It was actually Darrell here who shot me a note and said, "Hey, like, let me know if you ever wanted to get a group together for a conversation." So I shot a note to Joel, I shot a note to Luke, and the rest is history, as I say. So that's a perfect segue into the panel. We're joined by Luke, Joel, and Darrell. So let's kick things off with like really short introductions, 30 seconds or less, folks. Yeah, Luke, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, my whole life in 30 seconds. Let's go. So hi everyone, I'm Luke. I mainly talk nonsense on the internet for marginally small amounts of money. For the past 14 years or so, I've been in recruitment, but for the past 8 or so, my role has been to embed into scaling tech companies as a tier leader, set up the tools, systems, processes, best practices needed to scale in a way that keeps really high caliber, but also reduces the level of effort to make a hire. So you've got a nice efficient funnel, and basically people isn't a blocker. So a company's investment milestones. Before that, I was actually a magician, if you can believe that. I was a professional magician for 10 years, went around all of Europe doing magic for corporate companies like Coke and Sony. Before then, I was a croupier. Before then, I was a window cleaner. And then that's me up to childhood. Was that 30 seconds?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's my favorite fun fact about Luke was the magician for such
Luke,
a
that's cool, man. Yeah, I was gonna
so
say that's such a cool fact. You're in the magic. That's awesome.
Yeah, wasted my 20s is a cool fact.
Well, Darrell, do you want to kick us off next?
Yeah, I totally can. I was gonna say if we knew that, we would have asked Luke to bring some tricks. But happy to be here. My name's Darrell. Hey, everybody that's watching. Originally from the UK, live here in Florida. Been in recruitment for the last 5 years. First half of that was tech. Now I sit in aerospace. I'm an in-house recruiter, and so love what I do. Love working with stakeholders, C-suite, hiring managers, etc. to build teams. And yeah, known Steve for a while, known Joe for a while. Luke, today is the first time we're actually getting to kind of meet and talk, so that's awesome. But yeah, stoked to be here and talk. I'll throw it to Joel.
What is up? Well, it's good to be here with all of you guys. I have been in recruiting for a decade on the agency side, so I will hit you up after this with a really, really poorly constructed sales message. Been in recruiting for a decade with agencies, worked with a variety of companies, all different levels. Then about 5 years ago, I started creating content about recruitment, mainly on LinkedIn. And then I became obsessed with creating content. So do a lot of content creation, got multiple podcasts, multiple live shows, and just love having real conversations. Like that's definitely the feel of my podcast. Trying to learn as much as possible. And now I do executive HR search as well. I've been doing that for the last 6 months. And just excited to be here with you guys.
Thanks for joining us. And
Yeah.
I think the Realest Recruiter is very appropriate for Real Talk today.
Let's hope so.
Amazing. Well, actually, the one common thread here outside of all of us being in the recruiting industry is everybody here has gotten somehow like really into content creation. Each of us pretty active on LinkedIn. And so we've got a few topics that we're going to go through, but for all of you joining us today, we'd love to keep this casual, interactive. So feel free to drop questions in the Q&A here, and we'll definitely get to a bunch of them at the end. But potentially, if they're on topic related to what's being discussed, we'll try to weave them in throughout. And so to kick things off, like I mentioned, everybody here is super active on LinkedIn. Let's take that hat off for a minute. What's the biggest thing that is happening in the industry right now that no one's talking about on LinkedIn?
Luke, that's all you, man.
Am I starting? Okay,
Yes.
let's do it. Okay, so first of all, I think this is a tricky one because there's stuff that's not being spoken about on LinkedIn just because it's hard to speak about it in that format. I would say the biggest thing that, in my experience, is governance, and what I mean by that is the roles and responsibilities that you've agreed to when communicating with TA, when going about creating a successful TA function. It's easy to talk about tools and systems. It's really easy to do that. It's easy to ask for X hires and a system that's going to help and a tool. But what is often missing in particularly startups going into scale-ups is a really effective governance of TA functions. So for example, I worked with a Web3 venture builder a while back, and I was there to implement like ATS systems and just basically just tighten up their systems. And I was speaking to all of the stakeholders. I was speaking to the recruiters, and they said, we're really glad you're here. We can't wait to get this ATS in. And I said, why? And they said, the interview scheduling is a nightmare. And I said, oh yeah, well, auto scheduling is fantastic in this tool. This is great. Like, why is it specifically about interviews that's the problem for you? And she said, well, sometimes the interviewers just don't turn up. Well, that's nothing to do with tools and systems, right? That's a difficult conversation with a stakeholder that's not being had. And I think the biggest deficit in TA right now is actually just engaging and building at the very, very beginning, at the very top of your funnel, a certain level of governance with your stakeholders. So an agreed upon behaviors, punishments, even like what is the cost of someone not doing what they said they would do to the business. We can use tools and systems to calculate that, but I would say governance is probably the biggest deficit in an effective TA function that I've seen. Because whenever I'm speaking to customers, they want to talk to me about tools and systems, but I often find I'm having to say, slow down, let's first take a step back and talk about the governance. And you'll often find that the biggest savings, cost and time isn't in a tool, it's in actually, this person is an SLA or a little SOP or a bit of training. It's ugly and it's messy and it's nuanced, but that's the really important stuff. And recruiters don't really talk about that because A, they're not empowered, and B, it's kind of boring to talk about on LinkedIn. Imagine if I spoke about governance on LinkedIn. No one wants to read about that. They want to read about Gem and all the cool AI tools that's going on, right? So that I'll stop talking, but I think governance is probably one of the biggest things that you as a recruiter can improve.
I love that, Luke, and all of us vendors would love all of you to believe that our new AI products are just going to solve all your problems. But no, you're spot on. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn about candidate experience. There's a lot of tips for recruiters. There's a lot from vendors about technology. But yeah, that is, man, you nailed it. Darrell, what do you think?
Yeah, Luke nailed it. From an in-house perspective, I think, at least from my own experience, what I see a lot of creators at the recruiter level, like the business owner level, the agency owner level. I don't see a lot of creators at the executive level. And so there's not a lot of content out there from C-suite, from executives, from stakeholders. That water cooler talk that I'm sure we're going to get into later on in the show. Like that water cooler talk about what do executives really care about? Like, what are they looking for? There's so much noise at the recruiter level. Hey, your resume has to be like this. Hey, your interviews, you should do this, don't do that. A lot of it on LinkedIn is noise and not factual. And then, we got real recruiters like Joel here who, giving out actual facts that help people. But what I'd love to see is the hot talk at the higher levels of companies. We get to hear from people like yourself, Steve, because you're from good stuff from Jam. But I'd like to see that on a larger scale.
Very cool. Yeah, that's like I'd never noticed that observation, but you're totally spot on. Yeah, Joel, what are you seeing?
I think there's a lot of pressure right now from executives in every department. So I talk to a lot of HR executives, a lot of recruitment leaders, and there's a massive pressure right now to justify, for example, hiring a human over using technology. And there's a pressure to find out how to use AI, how to bring in systems. And it's almost like I feel like there's a struggle to figure out and sound intelligent about AI and systems and like come up with a perfect system essentially for recruitment. But not a lot of people like actually know or can see what's going to happen in the future. So it's like this tightrope right now. I think it makes everybody really uncomfortable. I think if you dive into it and you say, well, I hear this a lot, AI is not going to place recruitment, but then you see companies doing mass layoffs. We see a lot of this joblessness going on. And so that's what I think people are talking about. Just this immense pressure from leadership. And then the other side is there's just a culture phenomenon that's going on, I think, with really, really big companies and just general trust in leadership as well that isn't getting talked about. Like I talk about it sometimes, but there's a lot of people who are in corporate environments that see trust being eroded at an executive level. And I think executives can see their own trust getting eroded as well, but it's like nobody wants to talk about it. So that would be, it's almost like just people are not bought into corporate culture like they were, I would even say probably 5 years ago, pre-pandemic. So those are two big things that I think, I see some people talking about it, but not necessarily a lot. And I can also understand with both of those topics why people don't talk about them as well.
Yeah, totally agree. I feel like both of those are pretty underrepresented on LinkedIn for sure. Wow, it's fascinating. I feel like we could do a whole session on any one of those topics, but I'm actually curious to hear about the inverse. What are the things that people are talking about? LinkedIn? I mean, you all are the experts. When you look at the posts that you put out, I'm sure if you're anything like me, you're going into each post and you're looking at the number of impressions and likes and comments and analyzing all the engagement. What are like the top performing posts and content that you're putting out? Like what gets recruiters the most engaged, the most fired up? What's on everybody's mind right now?
Gosh, we could spend the whole time on this topic.
All right, well, pick one thing that you've noticed. Actually, maybe like that you noticed in the last 6-12 months, as opposed to like all time recent.
I think Carmen, I don't know if you had mentioned this in the chat. Maybe you did. I think like mental health and burnout and just the fact that people are struggling. And again, I have like kind of a weird audience because obviously I have a lot of job seekers who are recruiters. Obviously I have a large recruitment following and HR, and I've been building my network within HR. But I think a lot of people are just struggling in these positions for whatever reason. And so anytime you do a post where it's like, hey, it's fine to talk about mental health and like how you're actually really doing, those posts seem to really resonate with people, which obviously isn't great, I guess, in some ways. But what about you guys?
I think LinkedIn is, in the last 6 to 12 months, Steve, LinkedIn is becoming more human in this. And what I mean by that is I think people want to feel heard and they want to feel that content creators care. So a post that is really, insightful, intellectual, educational, might not do as well as a post that is like, hey, I know what you're going through, I feel you, and it's hard. And I see those posts, or anything that is emotive, anything that is provocative, anything that kind of goes to the level of your audience, and it's like, and kind of encourages an emotional response. I see those do really well as well.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm seeing similar. Sorry, Steve, on you go, mate.
No, you first, Luke.
I was just going to say, I on the mental health piece and people just opening up to the stress of recruitment in general. I absolutely do see that. I think it's a natural corollary to every CEO being told by every VC, do more with less. Like, what was obviously going to be the human cost of that if you it trickles all the way down. Yes, systems and tools can help, but what are the chances that every company is on a distribution curve of how well they use tools and how efficiently they use their manpower? Then there's going to be more recruiters being asked to do more. So I think that's a great thing. The fact that I'm on LinkedIn all the time, I feel personally validated by having people who knowing that they've been on a similar journey to myself, and I feel like it's something that all recruiters often face. I would have to say what my own background, because I decided about 4 years ago to start putting stuff out into the community on LinkedIn. I was looking for an influencer. I was looking for the Lolgee types to influence me, and what I noticed was that everyone wanted to be Simon Sinek. Everyone was up here in the clouds talking about motivations. It was a TED talk. They were talking at me at a high level. And I'm like, there's 5 million recruiters on LinkedIn, 10 hours a day, every day. And they're going, how do I do this thing? It's busting my ass, this specific thing. And no one's talking to them. So for me, that was what really moved the needle. I actually gave myself a mission. I said for 30 days, I'm going to post every weekday, and it has to be low level and empowering for recruiters. And if I get 12 people, then that's my 12 people. That's my tribe on LinkedIn. Brilliant. And then what happened was it grew and grew. And I found that actually there was a lot of data-driven recruiters out there who wanted to empower themselves with data. So I find personally what really moves the needle for me is kind of by ignoring, you can go and figure out what it is that Joel's doing that makes his posts so amazing, but you can't duplicate his work rate. You can't duplicate like the quality, right? And I could do a bit of sleight of hand and maybe change a little bit of my LinkedIn, go speak to Justin Welsh, who can help me, all of that good stuff. But all you're really doing is just getting impressions for the sake of it. Whereas if you just focus as a recruiter on like who is going to be in my tribe, and then write for them, you'll find that they're much more engaging. So I have a really high engagement rate. Even with a smaller number of impressions. So for me, what moves the needle is just what I happen to be thinking about, because I've already found my tribe. So data-driven TA, actionable stuff, real resources that actually moves the needle. And I try and stay away from the Simon Sinek stuff because I feel like I'm kind of cheating my tribe out of a good bit of content. Does that make sense?
Totally, Luke. And this is one of the coolest things that I love about the content Luke creates, and it's all like super actionable best practices based on experience, and less optimizing for like eyeballs and building hundreds of thousands of followers, and more optimizing for like content that folks are getting a ton of value from, and building like a really highly engaged community around the content. So actually, quick plug for anyone looking and hungry for that kind of stuff. Luke, you should just drop your LinkedIn handle in the chat here, and I would actually invite all of us, Joel, Darrell, to drop your handles in the chat here so that folks can come find you afterwards. Very cool. Any other thoughts on this before we transition to you could probably guess it, AI? Joel?
Oh, I always got thoughts. I would say the other thing, I think that anything that's like, I think relatable and kind of entertaining seems to do well as well on LinkedIn. So I think to Luke's point, you've always got to keep that in mind. Like, I think people's mindset when they're looking for answers is, hey, I'm going to search, right? I'm going to go to ChatGPT, I'm going to go to Gemini, I'm going to go to wherever to find answers. I think when people are on LinkedIn, it is important to remember if they're scrolling, Sometimes they are just looking for like entertainment, something they almost take the stress off whatever they're doing as well, which is to Luke's point. I think if you're to me, if you're looking for like high value driven community, I would start a newsletter, and there's so many people who have really, really great newsletters with a ton of high value. Obviously, like Hung Lee is the one that comes to mind. But I think with social media, I don't know if that's always the mindset that people are in. You know, it's like they're doom scrolling, looking to pass time. And then they come across one of my memes, and yeah, I make fun of hiring managers. And it's funny because a lot of people also do say like, they're like, I've had, you know, executives say, hey, I love the fact that you say stuff that I could never say about a hiring manager, but we all know it's true. So I'll take that for the team, guys. It's all good. Someone even asked me, they were like, do hiring managers ever want to work with you? I was like, they probably have never seen my memes. Let's be honest. It's all recruiters. So it's all good, Luke.
I love that. Well, the thing that I'm realizing about how, you know, each of us chose to answer that question is, you know, Darrell, when it comes to like advocacy, you know, Luke, when it comes to keeping things light and entertaining and like brightening someone's, or sorry, Joel, like light, entertaining, brightening someone's day. And, you know, Luke, like hands-on best practices, like each of those styles is very authentic to each of you. And like, I mean, each of you is kind of the best of the best at you know, doing each of those things, and all of them have a really important place. And so that just really clicked for me as I heard each of you expand on that question there. All right. Well, of course, it wouldn't be a panel without talking about AI. So, but let's talk about how it's actually going with AI. I don't want to hear about the hype. I don't want to hear. Well, we'll talk about whether AI is going to replace recruiters later. Let's be real. What is going on with AI? What's the good? What's the bad? And what's the ugly? And if you want to talk about whether AI is going to replace recruiters, you can. But yeah, good, bad, ugly of AI. Who wants to kick us off?
DC.
Gosh, I think it's really noisy. I think we're still in that early discovery calibration phase, whatever you want to call it. I'm excited about it, but I think you summed it up well. I think it is good. I think it is bad, and I think it is ugly. But as far as from the job seeker side, I think it's a real tool of empowerment as long as it does not become a crutch, whether that's in your resume construction, your job seeking approach, your interview process. Don't let it take over, and don't let it take away the human element. Even in content creation, right? We probably all use AI to some degree to create great content, but our content doesn't look like it's been written by AI, and that's critical because it's still us. It's still the human element. So definitely pass it to the rest of the panel because there's a lot to unbox here. But I think, yeah, if I was to sum it up, I'd say it is good, bad, and it is ugly.
Finally, someone's talking about AI. God, I was just hoping. I'm speaking at RecFest on Thursday, and I think on the entire stage that I'm on for the whole day, I think mine's the only talk that isn't about AI. So it's obviously a topic of discussion, and rightfully so. It's like a total change in like epoch and all that stuff. To keep it like really tight for me, I'll keep it to the good, bad, ugly sort of format. The good for me is that it's a leveler. It's a tool that's not like GPT and LLMs. Anyone can get that. Anyone can afford that. So first of all, that's amazing, isn't it? This is not some enterprise tool that I need to be part of the right company to access. Any human being in the Western world can use it. So it's a great leveler. And you know about as much about what's happening in AI as your CEO, your CFO, even your CTO. So there's never been a bigger opportunity to actually change your domain, in our case, recruitment, for the better, for the worse, or for whatever, for your own purposes. So I think it's the good of it is that any recruiter here, the technical barrier to entry to create something technical that works has gone down to practically zero, thanks to coding co-pilots and cursors and windsurf and all that, and Replete or whatever. And as long as a recruiter is putting time into learning about just the actual what's out there and thinking a bit more of a systems thinking of way, like what problems can I solve for the business and for recruiter, then I think it's wonderful that there's no barriers, there's no financial or technical barriers to a good recruiter or a curious recruiter. You know, remember when you were an individual recruiter and you were just this like ball of curiosity and energy making hires? Like there's people out there probably listening right now who has that energy, and they also have access to the kind of AI that they could create. They could just as easily be the CEO of or the founder of a cool tool as they could be a recruitment lead in the next 4 years. That's amazing. You can't say that's not a good thing. The bad, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see an explosion in ugly micro SaaS. I think micro SaaS is going to absolutely slop up the SaaS world. And in the same way that marketers have eaten up the education field, you know, of every 100 courses, 99 of them is a marketer who doesn't have the domain knowledge. They're just really good at marketing. And tools like Kajabi and Beehive has just made it easy to create these things. I think what's going to happen is marketers are going to eat micro SaaS. They're going to gobble it up because you don't need a technical person anymore. You can just spin up some garbage and be really good at selling it. So I think the bad of AI within our field, being specific, is we're going to see like tons of micro SaaSes just slopping up.
You said someone's asking what micro SaaS is. So
Good question.
I'm sorry. So software as a service. So Gem is an excellent piece of software as a service. ATS, they're doing AI right. Really, really good job. A micro SaaS would be like a really small, high margin little piece of technology that could maybe bolt. No, you're welcome. That would bolt on to a tool like Gem or anything else, and it's very, very cheap. So a really, really small software as a service is micro SaaS. AI was you could probably create a micro SaaS this weekend if you really put the effort into it. So I would say the bad of it is that there's going to be software slop over the next 5 years that recruiters and heads of HR are going to have to wade through to get to the gems like Gem. Gems like Gem. See what I did there? And I think that covers the ugly of it as well. So I'll stop talking.
No, it's so cool. I never thought about the proliferation of micro SaaS, but you're totally right. Like, not only is AI reducing the barrier to like launch micro SaaS companies and products, but also like the whole AI technology lends itself towards these like low cost, self-serve, credit-based products. Like, you know, imagine if recruiting technology became a sea of like Calendly's and stuff like that, which are great tools, but they're all like tiny point solutions. The problem, and I think the thing that Luke, you're alluding to, is if AI creates a sea of micro SaaS, then we're just going to have this complex web of technology that we're trying to piece together. And more than that, every single recruiter might be using a different tool for the same use case. Right. And it's going to be a mess. So I never thought about that. That's a great take.
To Luke's point, there's definitely a burst of founders and co-founders starting to pop up all over LinkedIn. I think a lot of that is due to AI and that quote micro SaaS.
I'm just laughing because it's just every day someone's gonna disrupt and dominate the recruiting industry, but they got a really good idea, so it's cool. I think that the good with AI is, like Luke said, it's a level playing field. Actually, you've got a lot more advantage if you're someone like me. Like I work on, I'm a solopreneur, right? So I work for a recruitment company as well, but it's full desk recruitment. So I'm running my own business under a brand, essentially. Massive advantage. I don't have to ask. I don't have to like run through people to try a new tool. I can just use it, adapt, and figure it out. So because of the nature of the business I'm running lean. And I could create a website in 2 minutes. There's a lot. It's like I wrote a course that started monetizing in under 2 hours, and it's producing thousands of dollars a month. Could not have done that 5 years ago, right? So I think if you're a small fractional, you're running a solo business, massive advantage. I do think enterprise companies, they have a bigger challenge, right? Because you can't just integrate a new piece of technology in a day. It's like such long processes. And then by the time you figured out whatever your system is, and then you look at it, the technology is already advanced. So I think enterprise kind of gets a little bit screwed with this, but they're also building a lot of the big tools as well. I think the bad is we've been talking about this for 3 years, and I can literally on my hand here, I could probably name all the use cases that everybody has. And I know this because I get pitched with every single use case there is. So in 2 years, there's actually not a lot of use cases. And what I would argue is part of that is we haven't done a great job of identifying like what the actual problems are. And so from a vendor standpoint, they're like guessing what the problems are and saying, oh, is this a problem? And it's almost like because I've been pitched, and they'll try and like create a picture of a problem because they hired once or they did recruiting once as a hiring manager. But I think identifying problems is a different skill set almost. It's like it requires recruiters to be more like engineers versus recruiters. And so then you have outside people that will go, well, my candidate experience is terrible. That one time I tried to get a job. So here's a solution for that. But they don't understand systems, right? So it's like to Luke's point, I would probably, instead of micro SaaS, I'd probably just call it point solutions. And I think we're already at that point. It's just flurry of point solutions. And then there's system builders. So there's a difference between the two. And I think the ugly of it is I would feel as like an HR leader, talent leader, somebody who's in the seat right now, I just don't think you have enough time and objectivity to really figure out the problems and then create systems. Why? Because you got the job to do, which is already really stressful. And then I think the last 5 years has just been really hard for talent acquisition as a whole because there's so much uncertainty. And we're all dealing with like just the pure mental health of, am I even going to have a job tomorrow? Like that's what life has been like. Like my inbox is mixed with pitches, with AI people who are going to completely disrupt the recruiting world. And then it's full of recruiters saying, hey, I just lost my job and got laid off. So that's kind of the ugly of it. Good, bad, and ugly.
You mentioned a really good point earlier just about how you're able to move so much faster, and how business owners, agency owners, entrepreneurs can move a lot faster than like enterprise level companies. And you're absolutely right. Like any like hot and upcoming tool that comes out like today, by the time certain companies, have looked at it, tested it, talked about it, roadmapped it, made sure it's compliant with risk, done an audit on the tool, it's obsolete, and there's a new tool that's better than that tool. So I think, that was a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'd like to actually add on to that just to double, because I think your apps, Joel's like just found the zeitgeist that everyone in the comments are like, yes, Joel, and I'm one of them. I absolutely agree, but it's still, when I said initially that governance is important, well, I'm talking about tools, we're talking about AI, we're talking about proliferation of these tools. Tools aren't solutions. Tools make solutions an order of magnitude easier to implement. And half of the businesses haven't even mapped out what the solution is. So right now, like tools like Gem that are very, very good, probably find it hard to get a business to utilize it to its absolute maximum efficiency and get the full ROI, and which is good for everyone. They get the best tool. Gem gets the long customer lifetime value. Half of the work that I'm often doing is nothing to do with the quality of the tool itself. It's to do with the business being ready for a tool that's going to disrupt the way that they work. What's the point of having as I said before, like an auto scheduling tool if your interviewers don't turn up? So I think we're taking a right turn towards tools because they're so available, but we don't even have the business readiness to even make the tools we currently have work for us. So it's almost like that. My analogy is like, if all of TA, all the systems, there's like a race car, and the ATS or the tools is like the engine, and you've got like a really, really good engine and everything else is garbage, and everyone's looking at it going, we should probably get a bigger engine. It's like, no, we should. It's the one thing we do have, like get better transmission, get better tires, so I would say that like this kind of like feeds back to that initial problem with TA, is that we're just not ready from a business point of view. We're just not mature enough as a strategic function to even make use of the tools we currently have. And here we are talking about the explosion of even more tools. Where do we go? That's not an answer. Sorry, that's just me complaining. But that's my 2 cents.
No, I love it. I love it, Luke. And I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat here in the Q&A. Looks like we hit briefly on a few of these things related to like IT, infosec, legal concerns with enterprise. Actually, do you want to spend like a minute and a half, 2 minutes on that? Does anyone have experience with how to navigate that stuff? Because a few folks were curious about Workday AI recruiting lawsuit. Other folks were curious about IT infosec teams throwing wrenches in the use of AI. I mean, Luke, you yourself, you're a talent leader. Do you have any experience navigating those kinds of conversations and stakeholders internally? What's your like pro tip for folks on this call that want to leverage it?
It's a good question. Yeah, legal are your friend. They're not blockers. Legal are there to enable you as much as possible. And you have to understand anything that you want has to be put in the wider context of the business. Even the sector that you're in is important. So if you're in finance, or if you're in a highly regulated environment where you can expect to be audited, that audit goes over through TA as well, right? So an auditor is going to overturn everything, and say, right, how do you know that this is secure? How do you what is the risk here? And if you don't have a plan for that, then that's hard for you to pass an audit. A business that wants to get more investment, they're going to get audited. You know yourself, like Andreessen Horowitz don't just pitch up to your front door with a wheelbarrow full of cash and goes, there you go, kids, and go see in 6 years. They do some serious due diligence, right? So we have to just take a step back and realize that we're a smaller cog in a bigger organization. So my pro tip is to write down a risk register. Really, really simple thing, easy. You can just get a template, which just sort of says what are the risks, what's the chances of the risk, and what's the impact of the risk to the business, and then help legal fill that out. And then go from there. So it's just a really good place because it means that you don't have to solve the problem. You just have to be able to prove to a third party that you've evaluated the problem and you've done your best to mitigate it. And then anything that remains, you just say, this is the risk that we take on to improve. So for instance, if we get a massive saving in time for recruiting, and it means that we get a lower time cut to hire or lower OPEX within TA, then that's the outcome that we want, even if it means a smaller risk here. We've evaluated that this risk that someone with a regional accent or a different accent may not have been, the AI may not have picked it up very well, and then that could have caused a hallucination specifically in their instance, and all these things like this. Could they claim discrimination? Potentially. It's not regulated yet. We don't know. What is the likelihood? What is the cost? What is the mitigating step? So just work with legal, build a risk register around AI, and then just keep adding to it. Every AI tool is like a line item. That's my small tip.
Cool. Yeah, I've got kind of two thoughts for folks. Actually, this one I'm borrowing from Becky. She's the VP over at HubSpot. I was on a panel with her was that Transform? Joel, you were there, right? I think that was, Transform. She had this really, really cool tip, something that she had done with her organization, which she had basically mapped out, here are all the use cases of AI in recruiting. Let's align philosophically about what the risk level is and whether any of these use cases are actually making hiring decisions. Because that's the big thing to watch out for from like a legal and compliance standpoint in recruiting is, does this technology make a hiring decision for an active candidate for a job, right? That's like the big recruiting risk. And so she mapped that out without even like going into specific tools about all the different use cases, call intelligence, AI sourcing, AI screening for app review, and a number of other use cases. And then she worked with legal to align philosophically like high, medium, low risk on those things. And then when she had a new technology that she was evaluating, she could just say, hey, this maps into this category that we've already aligned on. And that way, like legal could kind of frame it up in terms of something that they had already understood. So I really liked that approach. I think that the second tip, just being on the other side of this, because we've got hundreds of customers now that we've coached through and worked with their legal teams. I've never seen this before. In the past, like whenever we would go through legal review for like a new partner of ours, it would just be back and forth over like red lines and maybe some email questions. That doesn't cut it. for some legal teams when it comes to AI. It's like the Wild West, and every legal team is like trying to wrap their heads around what AI means. Could it hallucinate? What if it takes some of our sensitive data and like feeds it back into the algorithm and exposes it? There's so many open questions in legal's minds. And then specific to recruiting is like, ooh, if it could make a hiring decision or influence a hiring decision, that could be really risky. And so what I found is scheduling a 15-minute demo with your legal stakeholders of the product can just really help simplify the problem. And I've never seen that before. I've never seen a sales process where we've had to hop on a call and demo the product to legal, but it really has sped things up. And we've done that with customers like Airbnb, with Zillow, Stripe, McKesson, and like a 3 to 6 month legal process was condensed down to a few weeks by just like being like, oh, that's how the product works. So it's not making hiring decisions. So that's my quick tip to anyone out there. Try to get your legal team on a call with the folks that you're talking to. I have another cool question from the audience here, which I think, Joel, Darrell, would love to get your take on the AI conversation. What do the panelists think about the stories coming out about candidates using deepfakes for their interviews? I bet all of us have heard about that. Like, what's going on?
Way to ruin remote work,
Yes.
It's like one more reason to get us back in the office for face-to-face interviews. No, this is something which has been coming up more and more and more. Like, I run a podcast, I think we're on episode 100, and over the last 5 episodes, definitely been a huge issue. And I know that a lot of companies are thinking about it, and a lot of them, quite frankly, have said, "Yeah, this is why we're going back to hybrid, because we'll just get people in the office to interview so we can actually see them and know that they're human." And that's been one of the possible solutions people have come up with for that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like maybe CEOs are looking for an excuse to call people back.
Anything. I'm like, wow, We messed this one up big time.
Yep. No, it's so interesting. I mean, I'm seeing deepfakes in the interview process. I'm seeing a lot of fraud. Actually, like, was it North Korean like fraud actors that are trying to like do all sorts of scams by like getting remote employees hired. I think it's like a coordinated attack or something. Has anyone heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, that one's come up a number of times. I think somebody, and then I know there's one going around right now. Isn't there some guy who, like he got hired at like 20 different companies? So I mean, the crazy thing is I love the entrepreneurism of some of this stuff where like people get a job and like have 5 contractors working for them. I'm like, why not just start a staff? Like, you're doing basically your staffing agency is what you are. But I think, background checks is another one. I've seen more and more companies like getting really big with background checks and like trying to verify people. I don't know. What are you guys seeing, Luke and Darrell? Yeah, so that's it. So that is who I'm thinking of.
There's a whole subreddit with hundreds of thousands of people that are doing this.
He's like the people's hero. This is why I love this stuff, because it's kind of funny and cool, but makes good content.
We're living in the wild west, aren't we? And it's kind of crazy, but
yeah. And that legal.ai, please do not go. Like, it was a total joke.
I know. Joel,
sorry,
people look at you as authentic and credible guys. So when you drop stuff like that, people are going to scramble. Just to echo what Joel's saying, I think that background checks become more prevalent. Thorough background checks. Even in remote jobs, that first interview being on a video conference call, whatever. A lot of companies at some point through the process are putting an in-person interview. Like, we need to meet them in real life. Please, I need to shake your hand and see that you're real and that you're one person. So I think just more rigorous background checks being rolled out and an in-person interview. What about you, Luke?
In all honesty, I haven't in my own field seen that much of it. So I'm always reluctant to talk as an authority about something that I've never even once come across. That would be a bit arrogant. But from my point of view, I think that it's something that is always going to be there's always going to be an opposite side to the technology, right? The use case of the technology. I was speaking, I do a lot of product advisory stuff, as you know, Steve, and I was speaking with someone who was creating AI black boxes for businesses. So like they do the AI, the internal gubbins, you just tell them what you need, they create it. And they created this tool that essentially tracks a LinkedIn users when they update, their LinkedIn. Usually it's an indicator that they're looking around. And then they give it to the customer as, hey, this is a great sourcing tool for you. And then they turned around and said, oh, also we can use it on our own employees and see who are the flight risks. Wait a minute, that's evil. You just took something really cool and just gave it a really evil use case. So like, it's not just deep fakes. It's going to be every part of AI that's going to have these sort of corollary problems that we have to mitigate against. I would say more and more because of the sea of applications in my field, because it's so sourcing heavy, it's so niche. We don't really need to advertise that much, and then we need to know our market. So a lot of it's based on personal relationships that have been built over a long period of time. So if we're in a world where the only way to get a good job is to have done lots of good work and have built a bunch of personal relationships with a few people in your fields that you need to be respectful of, it's not the end of the world for me. Like, defects are horrible, but maybe it's going to break the current crappy mode of top of the funnel recruitment that we all dislike that mode. So maybe this is going to be finally the thing that burns it down. So maybe it's a bit of a contrarian take. I don't know enough about how to combat it, so I'm afraid I don't have any solutions there.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, if you're worried about fake applicants, deepfakes, source them. Take control over who's entering the funnel. No, really, really interesting insight. I haven't heard as much. I mean, I've heard of a few examples of deepfakes like in the interview process, but I've heard a lot more about fake candidates at the top of the funnel, fraud, stuff like that. I see a chat here from Megan about Clear, which is pretty cool. It's like a verification tool. And so I think the whole industry is trying to figure out how to approach this, because month over month, this is by far the biggest growing concern that I'm hearing. And, I think there's kind of two things that a lot of the industry is looking into right now. One is some very top of funnel detection. So based on an application, what IP address did they use? Was it from North Korea? Right. But also does their LinkedIn match what they're putting on their resume? Is their resume or is their LinkedIn really sparse? Was it just created last month? Right. But they're, there's a bunch of signals you can look for that might hint that somebody could be a fake profile, and at least flag it for recruiters. And the second thing is more of that identity verification, which is more of a mid-funnel solution, like a Clear. You might not throw a background check at every single person at the application stage, but maybe you would at some point in the interview process. And so I think a lot of folks are looking at tackling it from both angles. And certainly being Gem, we'll probably try to build some of that stuff into our platform over the next 2-3 months. So cool. There's one more question I really wanted to get to, because I think this one's really interesting. And I think, Joel, Darrell, Luke, you're all going to have some really cool advice for our audience here. So we're in this employer market right now, right? Where it feels like the power dynamic has shifted. It used to be a candidate's market 3-4 years ago, and now employers have a lot of the power. And so, I think one of the things that's happened is, and to make things worse, recruiters are drowning in a lot of work. They're handling 56% more recs compared to 3 years ago. They have 3x the application volume. This is all based on Gem benchmark data. And all we hear about on LinkedIn is how recruiters are ghosting and candidate experience has gone way downhill, and it has. But on the flip side, how do we expect otherwise when recruiting teams are so overworked and handling so many applicants? And I don't think any recruiter actually wants to provide a bad candidate experience or wants to not get back to candidates. So, what's just like one practical tip for the overworked recruiter that cares about candidate experience, that wants to prioritize it in this market?
I'll go. I promise I won't talk as much as I did before. I think if you want to empower yourself with your own data, it's kind of like this really hits home to me personally. I burned out twice. It's a physical thing, right? It's not just being a little bit tired or a little bit hard to concentrate. It's a physical thing. And if you have a good understanding of the work that you do, so if you can measure your volume, your conversion, and the capacity, so which is something that recruiters and businesses often don't measure, which is very, very important to measuring bottlenecks and things like this, you've got a really three-dimensional view of your work and how it relates. It doesn't matter about how many recs or anything like that. You can calculate very specifically based on your historical work how much you can conceivably do, and then feed that back to the business. There isn't much of a feedback loop between recruiters and businesses. There isn't much. There's a huge knowledge gap in domain between what the business thinks recruitment is and what it's capable of, and what a recruiter is actually capable of. So my biggest tip for an individual recruiter in these sort of changing times is like, you could focus on what you personally can control, even if it means getting a spreadsheet and just writing down every single thing that you do, like every bit of outreach, every screen, and just really getting to know your workload, your time. And then you've got the data to say no respectfully with data, right? So can you do these extra 2 roles? I don't have the time for that, or I could do it unless it means that this role would take longer. So go speak to that person. All of a sudden, it's not about you. It's just about the practical facts of the matter. So I think it's a really good thing to empower yourself personally, is to just really understand your data. And yeah, you could pull a report from Gem, but if you don't have an ATS with good reporting like Gem, just literally a spreadsheet. Like go on my website, I have got a spreadsheet for 2025. Go download it, start using that.
Only $9.99 a month.
only 0.00 a month. If it's a recruiter, it's free. If it's a business, then I charge for my time. I would say like empower yourself with your data. Learn about what you can and cannot do, and then you're empowered to say no. And if you say no, and they say, well, sorry, you still have to do it, then you've given them the outcomes. Like it's not a matter of yes or no. It's a matter of choices. If I do this, I can't do that. If I do that, I can't do this. Usually there's multiple stakeholders with different priorities. All of a sudden they're talking to each other, they're pressuring each other, and you're just trading time, and you're still learning, and you still oftentimes like senior leaders really respect that as well, because they respect that you are totally in control of your time. You know what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead. I'll keep mine short and sweet. I think Luke covered a lot of the salient points. Like capacity planning is critical here. Like having a pulse on your bandwidth and having honest conversations with your, if it's your line manager, yourself, your director, whoever it is, whoever you report to, having those honest conversations. And I think the market and the environment has influenced this a lot, because recruiters are being laid off in waves, and the ones that are left behind are like, oh my gosh, if I don't do these 99 recs, I'm going to lose my job. They're going to replace me with someone. They're going to replace me with someone that can. And so understanding, pausing, slowing down, like slow is smooth is fast. If your candidate experience, my honest opinion, if your candidate experience sucks, it's because you've got too much work on your plate. Like as you reduce your workload, the candidate experience isn't compromised as much. And of course, so those honest conversations need to happen. And as much as possible, try not to worry about losing your job. If you, to Luke's point, if you're having those capacity planning conversations with the business, if you're bringing data to those conversations, you should be able to find a healthy spot. And the thing is, recs is a terrible metric to use anyway, because recs mean something different, even within the same company. 10 recs could be a much heavier workload than 80 recs, depending on context. So totally. I think, to wrap it up, just be honest with yourself, and have those conversations early and often with the business.
100%. Joel?
I always think candidate experience is a funny one, because it's like at the end of the day, the person who has the best candidate experience, in my opinion, is the one that gets the job. And in this day and age, if you got thousands of applicants, there's one person that's going to land the job. With that being said, I think I had a recruiting leader at UPS on my podcast not too long ago, and I think they have to hire 250,000 people in 3 months, something ridiculous. And they said, this is a leader there, said that the thing that he's found that people really value is transparency throughout the process, communication, and speed. So I think, first of all, define what that good candidate experience looks like, and then look at just what you're delivering now, how it weighs up to where you want to be, and make those changes as much as you can. And to be honest, guys, if the company you're working with doesn't actually value that, which is really easy to see, just look at your paycheck and look at your KPIs. And if candidate experience is not on there, in my opinion, like candidate experience it's a business decision, and the leaders need to be driving that. And if they cared about it, as recruiters, we would be paid for delivering great candidate experience. So you also have to weigh it up. And I think someone said, like, you got to control what you can control, which I think, transparency and communication, we have somewhat of that, but also just know, in my experience, whenever I've delivered feedback to people or even gone above and beyond, a lot of times it just hasn't even worked out how I thought it would. So a candidate experience to me is always it's a nuanced issue that I think a lot of people have different perspectives on.
Yeah, agreed. And I love the insight that the person who has the best candidate experience is the one candidate that got hired for the job. I mean, that's...
and then you never notice how they always forget. Then, like, I've never had a candidate getting hired, and then like 2 months later, like, hey, by the way, like the experience was just terrible. Can you guys do something about it? It's like, it's just like they forget, and they're like, oh yeah, whatever. I don't know why we do that, but
I love that insight too of like, a company that's has a KPI or a goal around candidate experience is actually taking it seriously. Because like, if you're not tracking, if you're not goaling on something, then does it matter? I have a ton of respect for the companies out there that have something like that in their recruiting process and KPIs. I believe it, I've talked to customers like Lattice, for example, and they have a policy where they get back to every single application, like period. And I'm like, wow, tons of respect, because so many companies aren't doing that in this environment because it's a lot of work. And let's be real, you don't have to get back to every applicant to make that hire. And to, Luke and I believe Darrell's point, when recruiters are under so much pressure to deliver and just fill roles, then candidate experience goes by the wayside. And so I love that. Lattice has like elevated that as like a top level KPI for the team. Darrell, I think you were hitting on something that I firmly believe, which is to solve for candidate experience, we first need to address recruiter experience. Like, how can we expect our recruiting teams to deliver on a great candidate experience when they're so overworked? And so, a lot of people are talking about candidate experience on LinkedIn, for example, but the root cause is like we're never gonna get there if folks are managing too many recs and overworked. And then Luke, your insight about leveraging data, spot on. Here's the piece of data that nobody's talking about. There's this misconception that recruiting has gotten a lot easier over the last few years, because surely it's a company's market and there's so many applicants. You're getting thousands of applicants for a role. Like, surely you should be able to fill that role really fast. But I was looking at the benchmark data across thousands of GEM customers just the other day, and on average, it's taking 42% more interviews to make one hire. 42% more interviews.
Doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me.
Time to fill has gone up 4 days on average across all roles. And that's a mixture of like faster roles and longer roles. It's wild. There's this really big misconception. I think the misconception is stemming from like hiring managers and execs who think that recruiting's gotten a lot easier, and we should surely be able to like fill these roles faster with higher quality candidates. But then, there's this big delta from like what recruiters are actually experiencing on the ground. Are you seeing that, Joel?
I just think this in human nature is the more choices you have, the harder it gets. There's a reason when you go to a restaurant and there's like 50 pages in a menu. I don't know if you've ever watched Kitchen Nightmares, but Gordon Ramsay, the first thing he does is he comes in and just goes simplify it. Like more choices make things more difficult. And then if there's a pressure of like in 2021, that was the most efficient and quickest I've ever seen companies recruit, because it was
Totally.
We got to get down because we know we're going to lose the candidate. As soon as it flipped and they went, oh, well, we can always find another one, then everything just gets trickier, because then as a recruiter, you've got to show I've gone out and I found the best person. But the truth is, finding the top person is always going to be a challenge. Mark Zuckerberg, he just did that whole throw hundreds of $1 million compensation packages to find the best people. That should just be a lesson. You can get the best candidates that apply, but but you know how it is with hiring managers. We want the best person. Finding the best people is always going to be a challenge. There's just no two ways around it. So yeah, more choices, more problems.
Yeah, I agree with Joel. Market saturation actually it creates choke points and pain points, and hiring managers. I'm in-house. For the last 5 years, I've been in-house, and I've seen it. I've seen managers, be given one or two stellar candidates, and the decision is fast. And I've seen them, right now, I can easily present 5 or 6 rock stars, 7 or 8 rock stars. And what I see is, instead of quick hiring, sometimes I see analysis paralysis. And so, yeah, anybody right now who's saying recruiting is easier because of AI, because of the current landscape, probably isn't working in this landscape. It's definitely not easier. I feel like it's faster in some contexts, but it's definitely not easier.
I think there's two things to talk about there. I absolutely agree with both points. It's just on one side, from a very operational point of view, bottlenecks are bottlenecks. So if you had 1 million candidates, but you only had 2 engineers who can do technical interviews, then you've just created a candidate pissing off machine where candidates just wait behind the technical interview. That's a bottleneck, right? So the business actually hasn't gone into improving their talent operating model. Then you're not making any more hires. It's just go read the goal, go read the Phoenix Project, learn about bottlenecks. That'll do better than any RPO that you're going to pay for. And then on the second thing is the only impetus when I was working again through that 2021 phase where everyone was hiring. The only impetus I could get hiring managers to make changes in what they think should be the best, which is going to be, I want to speak to them, should probably speak to the other stakeholder and this stakeholder and this stakeholder, because they're being risk averse, and that's fair enough. The only way you can actually push back on these people is by saying, look, they're a rare resource. If we get them by next week, or your competitors. It's that simple. And the market was reinforcing that. There was social proof everywhere they look. Everyone they spoke to, all their friends in other companies saying the same thing. So they understood, right, we're on the clock here. It has to be good, but it also has to be fast. And now I think that social proof is the exact opposite, exactly as Joel said. Everyone thinks that it's fine. So you can just say, yeah, I think that's why you see more interviews is, well, what does it cost us? It's not like they're probably desperate for a role. Why not have them speak to the CMO and then the CEO and then the CTO and then one of the engineers and then some of the investors and then maybe a case study? Why not? We've got 1,000 people in the process. Someone's going to survive that. So I just think there's 2 things. One is operational, and one is just a mindset shift of the people that we need to drive narratives for change. The only solution we have, again, is just going back to data. We need to be able to show them the time and the money. If you can't turn recruitment data into threatening their time, their money, their engineering hours, features that are on their roadmap, then they're not going to care. So if you're saying we've got a low conversion rate, so what? I actually once spoke to someone in a fintech I used to work with and said, your tech conversion rate is 44%. And they went, that's fantastic. And I went, why? And he said, well, it just shows we only hire the best. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It means we're wasting millions of dollars every single year, and we're threatening your growth journey. Like, this is a threat. But they thought it was the opposite. So we need to be able to remember this is recruitment data. They don't care about that. But if you can translate that into you're wasting 600 hours of engineering time, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, that's a feature. I promised the business a feature. We're not going to be able to do that if we're spending 600 hours of engineering time hiring. So I think that's kind of an important thing to say.
All comes back to data. No, I love it, and I'm glad we got to talk about, like, probably in my mind, the biggest contradiction in the industry right now, which is like recruiters are expected to do so much more, 56% more recs than 3 years ago, 3x the application volume, yet the job has gotten harder. It's wild. There's a huge disconnect. And so, yeah, glad we got to touch on this. We could do a whole session on this, and even diving into like the data and how to actually advocate for, I mean, hey, what do people think? Folks dialing in, did you enjoy this today? Would you like more stuff like this? Real talk, just kind of shooting the breeze. Was this fun? Loved it. Yeah. Sweet. Cool.
It'd be pretty awkward if they were just like, no, it's terrible.
Like crickets. Well,
that has happened before on feedback from a couple of folks where it's just like one. I hate these guys. So good.
We are over time. We ended up, wow, like, I mean, I think that we just kept the conversation rolling. I saw the wrap up in 5 minutes countdown reset like 3 times. And so thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for staying on a little bit extra. We'll have more conversations like these. I'm excited to unpack more, and we'll see you all next time. Before we all hop here, actually, Joel, Luke, Darrell, do you want to drop into chat? Where can people find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, we'll just drop our stuff again.
Yep, drop it right in there for folks as we're wrapping.
Yeah, just let me know if you send an invitation. Just say, hey, saw you on the webinar too. That helps as well.
Yeah. Definitely add a note, because you'll get lost in the waves. But if you have that note, it will.
Yeah, especially if you're Joel and Darrell with such a huge following. So
I'm a compared to Joe, I'm a little fish. He's the big boy.
Show me the whale.
Luke, it was awesome meeting you, man, and loved your input today.
Yeah.
It's been great chatting to everyone. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Thanks for the opportunity, Steve. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Later.
See you guys.